Welcome back, everyone, to Music Wise. I'm Donato Cabrera, your host and music director of the Las Vegas Philharmonic and the California Symphony. We have a very, very special guest and an old friend and an amazing and inspiring colleague. But before we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is happening today. It's Tuesday. And I'd love for you to think about all the things that the Las Vegas Philharmonic and the California Symphony does for your communities, and choose today to reach out and donate what you can. We're very excited about all the things we're creating now that's we've never done before, and one of which is this interview series. As well as so many other things, Orchestra Online, which is now on the Las Vegas Philharmonic site. We're for the California Symphony. We are giving back today in partnership with many of the local health facilities and partnerships in Walnut Creek. And if you donate more than $100, we'll send you a mask as well as one of those partners a mask as well. So Giving Tuesday, it's a great thing. Let's jump into what we're about to talk about today and who we're going to talk with. Alexi Kenney has, and I'm not saying this, I know he's about to join us, but he has been inspiring me ever since we were to work together as colleagues in the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra, and he has since gone on to amazing things, which we'll talk about here during this hour. And so, without further ado, hi, Alexi.
Hey, Donato.
Thanks so much. Where are you joining us from?
I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, my apartment for the next couple weeks until my lease ends.
Aha.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. Moving in this time.
Indeed. Yeah. It's a topic I haven't really begun to wrap my head around yet. But as you mentioned, I was in the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra, and my parents are still in Palo Alto, California. So I'm plotting my escape at some point in the next 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I haven't thought about it yet.
Okay, so yeah, we don't have to talk about it much, but I mean, you're thinking about possibly moving back out to the West Coast?
Well, at least for the time being.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the news in New York is scary, or has been for a while, and as it is everywhere. It is kind of a crazy time to think about moving, but I think if I have a choice, I want to be with people rather than by myself. So,
but you know, it's so interesting because you know we've all been by ourselves in one way or another, and especially as artists like you and with like our friend Oliver Herbert, we've found ways to communicate, to share our art, to share our passions, our obsessions. We were just talking about before we went live how we're both sort of migrating towards the music of Bach these days, and it does make sense certainly to be listening to his music at this time. But you know, from what I've seen so far, you've found ways to experiment and again share what you're doing right now. Let's talk a little bit about what you've recorded and what has interested you in these last months, these many weeks now.
Yeah, so I guess I sort of my brain has sort of gone sort of like zigzagging around through various things. If you follow my YouTube channel or my Instagram or whatnot, I've been posting some little arrangements that I've been doing, which have given me something to do, but also a reason to pick up the instrument actually every day, which I hesitate to admit is hard for me. I mean, without seeing this expanse of, we're used to like a saturated schedule as musicians, right? And without seeing
Right.
that out of us, it's kind of like, how do
But
I
you know
have,
what? You're not the first one I've talked with online or off that's admitted that it's been hard to practice specific things, or learn new music, or maybe at the first, especially maybe the first couple of weeks, just sort of sorting out what this is all about. There wasn't any brain space left for music. So I think this, what you're talking about is normal. It certainly is for me, and has been.
yeah. I mean, I've had actually like from the beginning of this whole thing, I laid out a pretty extensive to-do list for myself. Like the first day, I was like, bam, 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 bam. This is like a wish list of what I've been wanting to do, haven't had the time to do. I have some projects that I had been thinking about, and some other interests that have sort of crept back into my daily routine. And so in a way, it's been actually a very, very creative time for me. And I feel like my heart and my brain is sort of alive in a way that it is in normal times, but maybe not in quite the same way. And I'm kind of enjoying where it's taking me, and the fact that I don't need to do anything on a daily basis. I don't have a concerto to prepare for, blah, blah, blah. I can just kind of be with myself and be with my own creativity and see where that leads me. So
I felt exactly the same way. It has been over 20 years since. I've always been a fan of recordings, but when you're and of reading about music and reading the things around music, why they were created. But it's so difficult when you're sort of on that, the performing hamster wheel. I hate to even say hamster wheel because it's such a joy, of course, but it's such a dedicated hamster wheel. It's hard to find that extra time to just even hear what other artists are doing completely out of your realm of existence, not let alone the specific thing that we're doing. And so you're right. You're absolutely right. For me, it's been such a wonder just to go on YouTube every day to find performances of organ music by Johann Sebastian Bach, just wherever my heart leads. And I think this has been a gift to us.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that I've been thinking about is like, we spend our whole careers ever since we're out of school being in the public eye and sort of, making public our process and the results of our process. And inherently, I feel like our art form is of incredible personal nature. And I think to rediscover that for myself, and I think a lot of us are sort of reconnecting with what we once, may have lost along the way somehow in this public arena. That obviously I do miss performing, and I think that's a different topic in a way. But to sort of rekindle this love, this private love for a bunch of different music, has really been so necessary for me.
Do you think there's a way somehow when the wheels start turning again, for you, for me, for all of us, to keep that in mind, maybe be more mindful of that inner spark that we forget that's there, perhaps, when we're so busy?
Well, one thing that I've been really enjoying is going on YouTube and listening to live performances, recorded live performances. And I'm not talking about like live streams, which is a different sphere, but like recordings. I think I sent to you like this Joni Mitchell recording from 1979, or no, actually, well, any sort of live concert recording,
Yeah.
there is a live recording of Joni Mitchell, Jaco Pastorius, and Pat Metheny, the whole concert from 1979, which is phenomenal. And
Oh my gosh,
it's
I didn't know that
interspersed with all of
existed.
these, yeah, it's interspersed with all of these improvisations, and it's really artfully shot, and it's just such, I don't know, such a discovery for me to have the time to do that. And watching some Berlin Philharmonic digital concert hall, and like these things which pop up, that I think that when life returns to normal, like I'm not gonna take for granted going to a live performance. And provided I live in New York City, or even, you know, wherever I end up, there's such value in live performance and in having that audience there. And there's something so inexplicable about the way that we as artists, I know I speak for myself when I say, like, I just have this heightened sense of my senses when I'm on stage performing for an audience. And I think audience members, it's a feedback loop, you know, the audience members have heightened perception, we on stage have heightened perception, and it all kind of comes together to form this beautiful heightened way of making music. And I think that is something that I have never really taken for granted, but maybe will appreciate as a real entity when things go back to normal.
I was trying to describe exactly what you just did so beautifully and so eloquently a couple of weeks ago on I'm sure all of us are experiencing our many Zoom cocktail hours and meetings and so forth. And I was trying to describe what I didn't miss and what I missed. And that's what I missed, the act of sharing with the audience, which is, I suppose, what the concert in the end is all about, right? It's that feedback loop that you just described. I've always said this, that a concert is a celebration of all the hard work that happens at the rehearsals and the preparation before the rehearsals. And when you walk out on stage and you see all those people that have, you know how hard it is to get out of the house at night to go and do something. And you see thousands of people that have done that for you, or for the orchestra that you're playing in, or for the recital, for you and your recital partner, what have you. That is such a commitment on their part. And you feel this obligation and responsibility, wonderful responsibility to share what they've paid dearly for to be there. And I think it's, that is also something that has this time away from that helped me to crystallize those thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also when we're so used to traveling from one gig to the next, kind of ad nauseum, you know, we get caught up in the airports or the airline delays or the
right,
you know,
where's the lounge?
Yeah, right, or whatever it is, you know, it's all this extra stuff that in the end, the audience has made that choice to be with you and spend their Friday night with you. And I love that, like, everyone has their own story. Everyone is coming to that concert for a reason, you know, and we can't take that for granted. I think especially now, when everyone's like freaking out, how are we going to get music back to normal, or any semblance of normal? And I think we can never lose sight of that fact, that it's such a privilege to be able to share our music with these people who are all coming together for their own reasons and sharing this one moment with us.
So let's backtrack a little bit so that everyone sort of gets an idea of who you are, where you come from. We've already mentioned that you're originally from the Bay Area. Your parents still live here in Palo Alto. You play the violin, of course. Was that your first instrument? What were the initial sparks for you in your family? And what was it? What attracted you to this organized sounds of music as a child?
I don't know if I can answer that, but I think my mom, who's probably watching right now, will tell you that I always responded to music when it was playing in the house. And I think I had two um, very observant and very proactive parents when it came to recognizing that.
Are they
And
artistic in spirit and nature? And
in spirit, yes. In practice, not necessarily. I mean, my parents are both amateur musicians of one sort or another, but that's really not what they do. Um,
but it's because that explains why there was music in the house, for sure.
Exactly. And I think my dad in particular has this vast collection of music that he was always, in all styles, that he was always playing. And to this day, you know, if I go home, there's always something playing, and it's always something interesting. And he has his strong opinions about everything. And
does he still surprise you with something you haven't heard yet? Like you walk in like, oh, what's that? I haven't heard that before.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the collection is vast. Like it's far reaching and it's vast. So
I love that.
Yeah. Now in the days of Spotify, Apple Music, it's less easy to see how vast it is. But I remember looking through as a child, like all of the CD collections and collecting my own CDs and having my own loves and my own little section. And so, yeah, it was always playing.
So why the violin?
Well,
was it the violin first?
It kind of, I always wanted to play the tambourine when I was little, like really little.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mom was like, you can't do that.
wise words for your mother.
And then it was like the triangle, and she equally was like, no, it's not good. So, so then I think, you know, like the piano just was kind of out of the question in terms of our house size and general cost. And now she's not sure about the cost aspect because, you know, violins are costly beasts. But yeah, so there happened to be this teacher who was teaching in the church at the end of our block. And my mom had the idea to go in and follow one of the kids with the violin case into the church. And I had a little lesson, and that was my first teacher.
Do you remember that moment?
I don't remember the very first moment. I mean, with a lot of kids, you know, you don't start out with the violin in your hands.
Right,
you start out with or if you start out with the violin, it's just kind of a tease for, you know, it's like, oh, this is what you're going to get in a few months. And then, you know, little by little, you start working on all things sort of holistically. So you're working on reading music. If you're not doing Suzuki method, which I did not do.
Really? Okay.
You're working on reading music, sort of. I mean, I did sort of a modified Suzuki where my teacher used the books, but not the method. And so we have these sort of levels of, you went through book one, you got a few stars, you know, like a blue gold star every time you completed a song. And then you moved on to volume 2, blah, blah, blah. So I don't remember the very, very first moment, but I do remember those first times when I had the violin and I could actually make sound, you know, and there was like a little ribbon around the sounding point where you're supposed to keep the bow straight all the way through, and there's little stickers around the parts where your left hand fingers are supposed to go for the C major scale. So yeah, I do recall all of that. And I do feel fortunate. I should mention that my parents never pressured me to practice as a child. So I came to it quite organically. And I would say in a way, I feel like my whole life has sort of developed like that. You know, it's developed more or less organically. I haven't really desperately sought opportunities and had crushing defeats. I've had some failures, but not like really wanting something and having the crushing defeat. And I don't know. It feels like it's been kind of a steady, organic development for me.
You know, you've shared with us some wonderful. I asked you the other day to share with us some of your inspirational performers, pieces, compositions, some of your performances. And the first one on the list wasn't surprising. We're sort of going to go out of chronological order of what we've just been talking about. But the first one on your list, which is what I'd like to share first, is a performance of a Bach Sarabande by Mitsuko Uchida, who I have to share with you. I don't think I told you, I had never met until last summer when I was in Austria, which is for whatever reason, for a lot of reasons, I find myself. And I was standing in front of the Salzburg Festival, the Festival Opera House. And the concert that I was about to see, was the very last concert of Bernard Haitink. And it was, on the first half, it was the Beethoven's Fourth Piano Concerto with the manual acts. Second half was the Bruckner's Symphony No. 7. And I'm sort of sauntering around in front of the Festival House, and right in front of me is the amazing Mitsuko Uchida. And I was bold enough to just go up and introduce myself. And I have to say, I sort of used you. We have a mutual friend and colleague, Alexi Kenney, and we worked together in San Francisco with the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra. And she immediately, what I loved about her, and what you'll see in the way she performs, she has a seriousness about everything she does that is so engaging, not seriousness and off-putting, but seriousness and engaging. And I'm so happy you chose as one of your links to share with everyone a performance of her. Talk a little bit about this what we're about to see and hear.
Yeah, so I've known Mitsuko since, I guess, 2015. My first summer at the Marlborough Festival, where she's artistic director. And since then, I've had kind of this like funny, amazing relationship with her. I say it's funny because like, I still really can't believe it when I'm such a fangirl of hers. I still can't believe it when like she texts me from time to time, and I'm just like, I just can't believe she texted me. And she's, as you say, she has this seriousness about her, but it's the most like, first of all, she's the most opinionated person I have ever met on every subject known to man. If you name a subject, she has an opinion on it, but it's not in a judgmental way necessarily. It's just like, that's the way it is for her, and she's so like excited about everything, so knowledgeable, so wanting to, for me, it's been, my relationship with her has been so beautiful because I'm so touched that she takes an interest in young artists, and not just an interest, but like really is devoted to people she believes in, and to the Marlborough Festival, and education. And it's never in a condescending way with her, which I always find that it's so pure in her music making, and that comes through in every aspect of her life. So yeah, I've also had the privilege of leading the Mahler Chamber Orchestra with her playing solo. And this piece that you're about to hear is the only Bach that I've ever heard her play. And I think, I wonder if this is the only Bach that she's ever played in public. I asked her why, because she played this also as an encore on one of our concerts. And I asked her why she didn't play more Bach, because as you'll hear, it's just mind-blowingly beautiful. And she kind of went, oh, no. Next.
Next question.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's watch it. I can't wait. Oh, and let's put it on mute here,
Yeah.
so we can. Yeah. Wow. There's something so special about great artists that do perform Bach, and of course I'm about this. I didn't know that she didn't perform other music of Bach, and what a shame, right? Obviously, because there's this. It's so interesting. It's between simplicity and profundity, right? It's just
Exactly.
it's so simple that what they're doing, it's profound.
Yeah, I think, you know, and you'll hear this with any interpretation of hers. And I'm thinking also of like the fact that you say simple. There's Sonata Facile, the
Hmm.
Mozart easy sonata, which most people know the first movement to. There's a recording of her also, I think, as an encore, playing the second slow movement of that piece.
Hmm.
And it's this, like, she's just plucking the notes out of a very energized air. Like, I don't know how better to describe it than that. Like, there's just this expectation and this sort of like pedestal to which she puts this music on, that then she's able to just take the strands of essence from the music and play it. And I love that aspect of her music making. It's always done in a genuine way and not a precious way.
Right. Plucking is such an interesting word because that's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, how on earth is she getting an instrument that is basically the opposite of how a harpsichord works? So if we think about a harpsichord, it actually does pluck. It plucks the string, and the piano, I hate to use this word, hits this. It sort of, actually comes from below and hits the string, on directly, with felt, and the harpsichord plucks it with a plectrum. And yet she was able somehow, through, I guess, there's no other way to describe it other than like magic, to create the illusion that she's plucking, the piano is plucking those strings.
Yeah, and I think you've touched on a subject that also I think about a lot in my own playing, which is
Mm-hmm.
the element of gravity and how do we counteract gravity. So, like, as you're saying, the piano has these notes which, yeah, you press it, goes down, and it goes out. But somehow the feeling of so much music, especially if you think of like a bar of common time, like
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, they're not
Mm-hmm.
four equal beats, especially in Bach, but there's usually like a bounce in one, and then 2, 3, 4 are up, and then
Right.
it goes back down. It's like throwing a ball up in the air, right? So I
That's
think
right.
so much of what we do, or what we should strive to do in our playing, is to find that feeling of upward motion and up defying gravity, so that when the gravitational moments happen, they really mean something. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't even have to have it be so extreme. As in Mitsuko's playing, I think there's just this subtle, like, it's almost like a pebble skipping on a pond, you know? It's
Mm-hmm.
this like, there's a bigger jump, and then there's like a few shock waves, you know? And but it never goes below the surface. Like, it's
Yeah.
just always sort of up. And I just love that.
It's so wonderful that you've been able to have these incredible artists be inspirations and be real people to you,
Yeah.
like you were talking about earlier. It's so important. I think another aspect of your playing, of your artistry, is not only your exploration of things that have happened, music that has happened, but music that is about to happen, that you help bring into the world. And this curiosity, artistic curiosity, I think is so healthy. Of course, it's so special when you can talk to a specialist, say someone who only plays the music of Bach or only does music on period instruments. That's a wonderful world unto itself. And then those musicians and artists I greatly admire. But I think there's something to be said for finding that new novel, finding that new short story, finding that new piece of music that keeps the art form constantly having some undergrowth and new flowers emerging. Was this always a part of your exploration, or was this something that sprung came into being as you were studying? When did this curiosity, or was it always there?
I think it was always there. And I think originally it stemmed from boredom. Like, shouldn't say that. No, I mean, boredom might not be the right word, but it stemmed from this sort of person that I am by nature, to always look for the next thing and always be looking for the things that other people aren't seeing and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that led me to, like, when I was in the YO, like in my early teenagehood, I played the Stravinsky Violin Concerto, and I unearthed some random solo violin pieces written like a few years past, and somehow just found them. I don't know how. And so I think I've always been attracted to the new, or the sort of underdog, like the great stuff that isn't playing or isn't being played. But I think I realized that for me, it also, the quality that really attracts me is the more that I get to know the body of work that we have in music, is this aspect of lineage and tradition, and that a solo violin piece, or a piece written for solo violin in 2020, inevitably has been inspired by Bach, and inevitably has been inspired by everything that comes between Bach and now, just by virtue of us living in that world and in classical music and having that as lineage. And there's some pieces which are so emblematic of violin, let's say the Bach Chaconne, or well, I'm really in a Bach kick right now, so
it's okay.
Yeah, so the Bach G minor Adagio, being a direct influence to Bartók's solo violin sonata, which was written in 1945. So that's a huge swath of time in between. And in between that, you had Paganini, you had these great violin writers for the concertos. And Bartók, of course, knew about all of those and had in his frame of reference like all of these pieces. And I just love seeing the development of music. And I think playing new works is just such a fascinating insight into not only that person's mind, but that person's vantage point on where they fall in tradition and how they see themselves as part of what lineage, whether it's conscious or subconscious.
Absolutely. I think that art can never be made in a vacuum. It's impossible to create something without, like you said, subconsciously or consciously reacting to something that has happened in the past in that art form. And I think even if it is to deny that thing that they're thinking about in the art form, and to respond against it, but it is impossible so therefore in some ways, it's sort of like this extra thread that's been added to this tapestry that has always been there.
Yeah.
Rather than a new piece of cloth being made unto its own.
Yeah. And I mean, there's just a little tidbit of trivia that I love, that Shostakovich, who maybe more than any other composer did live in a vacuum, because he was not exposed to any music past, I don't know what, maybe Brahms or something. Mm-hmm. That Shostakovich and Bartók are exact contemporaries and never met, except, they lived like however just a few hundred miles away from each other for at least a bit of time. I just think that is so mind-blowing, and that Shostakovich would have never heard Bartók's music and never been allowed to see, like, those scores were never allowed to go beyond like Soviet Russia. That's just mind-blowing to me. So I don't know. I mean,
especially today's world, right?
Yeah, but of course, and Shostakovich died in 1975, so that's not that long ago. But yeah, you think about, okay, so Shostakovich, of course, also exists in a lineage of composers, and he was looking to Mozart and to Beethoven rather than to people around him for inspiration. So I just think that's also fascinating.
You have a new album in the works. And what we're about to hear next is a snippet from that new album. And the reason why we're talking about new art being made is because you're sharing with us something from this album that you did you help commission, or was it just written for you? Tell us about the how it came into being.
Yeah, so the piece you're going to hear is by a good friend of mine, Paul Wianco, and he I admire equally as a composer and as a cellist. And I remember the first time that I mean, I'd been aware of his compositions and of his arrangements for a while, but the first time that I heard a complete piece of his, which was his string quartet, written I think in 2016 for the Iziri Quartet, called Lift. Highly recommend you check that out if you haven't heard it. The first time I heard that, I just I fell on the floor. I couldn't do anything for the 25 minutes that I was listening to it. It was just,
I can't wait to hear it.
It's the most vivid, imaginative. Speaking of lineage, he is American of Japanese and Polish descent, and this sort of tracing that he's gone of his roots in playing jazz, playing folk music, and being a member of a very successful quartet for a while, classical quartet. He's like such a Renaissance man, and I think that he's always exploring in his music. And one thing that I love that I think you'll hear in this clip is that he knows how to keep your attention without it ever sounding gimmicky. He knows inherently your attention span for various things, and what you're not going to hear in this clip, unfortunately, but you will once the CD or whatever is released sometime.
The LP. Why don't we just use a real old school term?
Yeah. Is that this piece is cyclic. So the material, first of all, the material that you're hearing in the prelude, there are 7 movements in this suite. It's based off of a Baroque suite because he wrote it for me. So there's and the material that you hear in the first movement is everything. It lays out the whole picture for what you will hear in the next 15 minutes of the piece. And the way that he's crafted that is just so beautiful. So yeah, I premiered this piece last summer at Wigmore Hall in London, and I've played it a couple times since. I can't wait to share it more with you.
Well, here's the first time of you wanting to share it right now.
Yes.
You're so right. He has such an a wonderful way of taking you to the next moment. You want to hear what is next, and he has such a mastery of knowing when to release the energy and when to build it up again. I can't wait to hear the rest of this suite. Wow.
It's really remarkable. And I think, this piece, as I said, it has 7 movements, and every inner movement, I think, just about every inner movement has a trio section. So there's like a bourrée with a trio, and there's the allemande with a trio, and it's a play on the sort of like, Baroque suite form. And I think it's just so incredible how he's able to have so much material and have it be so filled with content and so filled with verve and pizzazz and real depth. I mean, I think I've fallen really in love with this piece since I've played it, and part of that is because it's one of these things that's so filled with content that it just keeps giving you something to explore. So I really, I'd highly recommend you check out any of Paul's work. There's an incredible quartet for 2 violas and 2 cellos called Vox Petra.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting combination.
Yeah. It was written specifically for 2 couples, including himself and his girlfriend. And yeah, beautiful cello quartet. I hear there's a cello sonata that was just finished. So yeah, lots to look forward to. And I do hope that this is the first of a long collaboration between us. So
wonderful. I will talk about this question that has been posed to you. We'll just read it first. I'd love to hear more about the tour where you led the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, and what was your experience working with the group, and was it your first time leading a conductorless orchestra, and how do you feel about that setting? Aside from that, and if you feel free to answer that, but I think the general question is, you are a soloist, you are a recital partner, you're an ensemble player, but you also playing in an orchestra is still very much part of your life as a concertmaster, or it has been certainly in the recent past. So I guess, yeah, what were in response to those questions?
Yeah, so I will say that the first time that I led a Mahler Chamber Orchestra was one of the more terrifying experiences of my entire life. I think I was 23. I mean, I'm 26 right now, so it was like 2.5 years ago. But yeah, it was. I got there. We were rehearsing in like northern Italy, beautiful place, great food.
We'll get to that soon.
Yeah. So we were rehearsing there, and it was like, every other member of the orchestra is like at least 10 years my senior, and they're all Europeans, and I found it super intimidating. And then, I was asked to lead Beethoven's 7th Symphony, which has, like the most storied past from every conductor. I mean, it's my favorite Beethoven symphony, but it's like every conductor has their thing. And of course, this orchestra has played it like a million times with a million different conductors and leaders. And so I just felt incredible pressure. And I learned pretty quickly that all that pressure was made up, so that I in the sense that I got to know the members of the orchestra, and they're just one of the most supportive, most lovely groups of people that I have ever met. And it's pretty remarkable. They've been together for decades, and they're a touring only ensemble, so they don't have a home anywhere. They just go for like 2-3 weeks on tour in different places around the world. It's cool. But for me, like, thinking about that, I think it would be pretty exhausting to be with the same people for 20 years doing that. And yet I sense there's zero animosity. Like, people are just still so deep friends that they will have breakfast with each other. They'll have dinner, they'll have drinks, they'll have tapas, whatever, late into the night. If there's a concert the next day, who cares? Like, it's just such an amazing group of people socially, that pretty soon I felt okay in that way. And in terms of music, I really think that if you're a great social group, that makes the music better. Like, I think that's universally true, in my experience. And so as a result, they have this incredible musical bond that's been forged for however long they've been together. And yeah, it's been very touching to see that. And it's not something that I like. Playing orchestra, I would not say is my favorite activity in a way. Like, I really, whenever I'm playing in an orchestra, I miss the responsiveness of single voices, and I miss doing something with my sound and having somebody else react to that, and vice versa. So in a way, it's such an incredible experience to get to do this, especially while I'm still young, and get to know, like, Mahler's Second Symphony for the first time, or Beethoven's Seven leading it. Like, that's obviously a special experience. So yeah, it's been very rewarding in different ways, and I like to keep my mind open in terms of what I'm doing in my career. So I have friends and colleagues who would kind of scoff at me doing, or at thinking about themselves doing concertmaster or orchestra work while they're still trying to make a solo career. And I think it's all, like, at the end of the day, it's all good. You follow your heart and you'll be fine.
and like you said, there's no other experience like it when you're leading a conductorless orchestra, especially an orchestra so wonderful as a Mahler Chamber Orchestra, through a piece that is one of the great masterpieces of all art, not just music.
Yeah.
So you can't replicate that in any other way of music making. Speaking of keeping your mind open, I love the next thing you wanted us to hear, which is, you talked about it earlier. You talked about her earlier, which is Joni Mitchell. She must have a particular influence on you.
It's kind of funny because, my mom is a huge Joni Mitchell fan. And I remember her playing some Joni Mitchell albums growing up. But I think when I was young, and, like, even until recently, I got all that I needed from classical music. So I was such a classical music nerd that I didn't, like, my mind somehow was maybe not open to other things. And and I don't know what changed, but my mind somehow opened, and I'm very thankful for it, because I mean, I think the time that I listened, like, first heard Joni Mitchell as an adult, I couldn't stop listening. And especially these albums like Blue or Hajira, or, like, these very classic but incredibly artistic and unique albums for their time, that both of them also chart such a beautiful story over the course of the 60 minutes. It's quite irresistible. And there's something, the thing that I mean, many things that I love about Joni Mitchell, but she's such a diverse artist. Like, you can go through her whole catalog and you'll always know it's her, but she's singing in so many incredibly different and disparate styles. And
so true.
I love that she's always evolving. And on top of that, had just the most beautiful command of the most beautiful personal voice, and knew what to do with it. And there's a few recordings of the next piece, or of the song that you're going to hear, A Case of You, which is one of her most famous songs. And the most famous recording is the one on her album Blue, which was recorded young, early in her life. There's another commercial recording that she made like in 2000 or something, where it's orchestrated, really beautiful as well, completely different vibe. This falls like right after she released the first recording. I think it's 1974 live recording in London that you're about to hear. And there's another one on YouTube in 1980. I would so recommend just listening to all of these renditions. And while you're at it, a bonus is Aoife O'Donovan, who is a wonderful contemporary singer. She is also the wife of Eric Jacobson, who's a great conductor and a friend of mine. She has done, I think, the best cover of a Joni song. Like, she has the most amazing voice. That's also on YouTube. So
okay,
a lot
great.
to check out.
All right, let's listen to this. This is from 1974 live Joni Mitchell song "In Case of You," sung by Joni Mitchell.
Just before our love got lost, you said, I am as constant as a northern star. And I said, constant in the darkness, where's that? If you want me, I'll be in a bar. On the back of a cartoon coaster, in the blue TV screen light, I drew a map of Canada, oh Canada, with your face sketched on it twice. Oh, you're in my bloodline, holy wine, you taste so bitter and so sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you, darling. I would still be on my feet, I would still be on my feet. I live in a box of pain. I'm frightened by the devil, and I'm drawn to those ones that ain't afraid. I remember that time that you told me, you said love is touching souls. Surely you touch mine, 'cause how you pours out of me in these lines from time to time. Oh, you are my bloodline, holy wine, you're so bitter, you're so sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you. Still be on my feet, oh, I would still be on my feet. I mouth like yours. She knew your life. She knew your devils and your demons. She said, go to him, stay with him if you can, but be prepared to bleed. Oh, when you wine, and you're my holy wine. You're so bitter, baby, the bitter that you're sweet. Oh, I could drink a case of you. I'm still I'd be on my feet. I would still be on my feet.
You know, it's she's such a unique artist, and she's such a special artist. Whenever I've watched a documentary of that time and other musicians speak of her, when they always say, "Well, she was the best. She was
Yeah.
There was something about her that separated her from all the rest of us." You know, she had that incredible gift of being able to not only write a song with incredible lyrics, but to then perform it, which are two often separate categories into themselves.
Yeah.
How?
Sorry. And just as an addendum, and managed to be, to this day, unsurpassed in those songs. You know, nobody can sing a Joni Mitchell song like Joni Mitchell.
That's right. See how fast an hour goes by?
It's true.
And I wanted to play all of the. We'll put all of the things that we have played and we wanted to play on the playlist. But it just means you're going to have to come back at some point and talk about food.
That sounds good.
Maybe we should food and Bach, food and Bach. Maybe we could do like a little cooking show.
Oh, okay.
Why not? You know, now's the time.
I still remember, one of my most favorite memories is eating at Raku in Las Vegas with you, like super late night. I think it was like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something. I don't know. Am I getting it right?
No, that's about right. That's the only time you can basically get a reservation in that
That's
place.
Right. I send anyone who is like, need recommendations for Las Vegas. I'm like, just get out of the strip, go to Raku. And that was a special memory for me.
One of the many not so hidden gems of the Las Vegas culinary scene that makes Las Vegas such a special place. Alexi, it's been so fun to see you and to hear you and to talk with you about the things we love so much. And stay healthy. Let me know where you end up in a couple of weeks.
Maybe we can have a socially distanced Vivaldi Four Seasons.
Yes, indeed.
Which is what we were supposed to do in a couple weeks with California Symphony, but
who knows? We'll figure something out. It will happen in one way or another.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
And thank you everyone for tuning in, as they used to say, as they still say. And until next week, bye everybody.
Take care.
You too.